Hello to everybody that is joining us. Thank you for being patient as we had some technological issues to work through. But we are here with you live with the SCA Coaches Corner. How is everybody tonight?
Doing great. Thank you.
How are you?
Fabulous. I'm just going to say a couple words for everybody that is watching. By all means, feel free to ask questions. Just pop them into the comment box as the live stream is going on. I will keep an eye on that. We'll try to address them. We may or may not have time to get to all of them. It is not personal, but everybody does try to stay in touch. I'm also going to put up a link to the SCA Coaches Corner at the end of this. So by all means, check that out. If you have more questions, they're wonderful people. So I'm going to go away now, and I'm passing this off to you, Duke Brannos.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, welcome back, everybody. It's great to have you back. We have a great episode today. I've been actually looking forward to it because me and His Grace, or me and Lucan, don't get enough time to talk. I stalk him.
All right, I think we have it happens to all of us, doesn't it? Duke, Sean, may I pop over to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it looks like Brannos having a little feedback issue going on there. So yeah, we're definitely glad to have His Grace Lucan on tonight. This whole Coaches Corner really started as a conversation between some of us, and you know, the idea of what it would be like to be a fly on the wall for some of us that have been doing this for a long time, and actually being able to sit down and talk stick. And while we were just having technical difficulties, we were having some of that conversation, and I was thinking, you know, this would be a really good conversation to have live.
I'm back.
So yeah, now that Brannos is back, we'll let him go ahead and finish up what he was saying.
Sorry about that, everybody. Again, welcome back to the Coaches Corner Friday night. Happy to have everybody here. Please ask questions. We'll try to get to everything we can. His Grace is a busy man. I'd like to first thank His Grace Lucan for taking time out. He has a class actually going right above him or below him somewhere at the studio over there. And I thought he was one of the great people to get here to talk about training because that's his life now. So that's what he does day in, day out. And I'm hoping he, can share some of that with us and give us a little motivation to things to look towards and look forward to. I'd like to thank all the other folks that joined us again, Sean, Tristan, and we're looking forward to a great episode. Definitely put your questions up. If we can't get to them, then please post them up on when we post the video. Post it under there. We've been answering questions out of there a ton. I know even this week I've had a number of putting training stuff together for some people based on an episode we had last week. So we've been working through all of those things. We try our best to keep up with everybody. We have a great group of people out there helping all the time. Not just the coaches here, but a lot of other people around the SCA that have insight on all kinds of different things. And it's a great community to be part of. So I'm going to throw this over to Sean. Just give you a little background of kind of stuff we were planning to cover tonight, and it's all yours.
Yeah. So like I was saying, happy to have Lucan here. Besides being King of the East several times, Lucan has a pretty solid history of training methodology. He has a large household, a Von Drachenklaw household that he's been head of it. has just had, a string of, knights and royal peers and excellent fighters. And so the training methodologies that he's used throughout the SCA is something we definitely like to hear some of. His fighting philosophy, kind of what built his success, and then kind of how that transitioned into the live steel ACL combat that you've done as well. So definitely happy to have you here, and got some questions about your process.
I'm really happy to be here and really happy to share with everybody. So where would you like to begin?
Well,
Tristan?
Hey, yeah, what do you want to cover first, Tristan?
Well, a lot of people, I guess, don't necessarily realize. Maybe we can go into a little bit of the history. I know you came originally from the SCA. You had a great reputation there. You built a great household, had many reigns. You had students that had reigns as kings of the East. Now you've gotten into branching out beyond the SCA, which is doing the Knights Hall and establishing and creating an armored combat league. Maybe you could go into a little bit of history about that, on how you went from one to the other.
So we'll start at the beginning. 1981, I was kind of a gamer geek. Played a lot of D&D. Loved history. Basically the same stuff that all of us are into. And my mom said, "Hey, there's a Ren Fair down the road. Let's go to it. You'll find that fun." So I went down there. I met a guy named Lord Farrell, and Farrell was pretty cool. And I went to a few practices that summer, but I had to finish high school, and I dropped away from it for a couple of years and came back to it in '84. And once I came back in '84, Farrell was a master at arms, and I was a competitive swimmer who had some success. So I came into it as a bit of an athlete with an athlete's background. Not a heavy athlete, but a swimmer, which is good athletics, but it's not like the traditional stuff for most people. But I understood work ethic. And so when I came in and Farrell showed me what he was about, I basically ate it up and decided I was going to spend my hour a day on the Pell every day. Put in the reps, because that's key to all of this, is putting in the reps. It's not just the reps, but it's the right reps. And so I started with that. And a few years later, Farrell and I were moved apart. He moved to Newfoundland and I moved to Maine. So I did my own thing, and I took what he had, but I'm a different body build and a different aggression level. And I liked the things that Siegfried von Hallstern had been doing, who had worked with Farrell, of course. So I took the best of Farrell and what I thought was the best of Siegfried, and I kind of squished them together and made them me. And then I gleaned from anyone I could glean from. So I looked around and go, oh, Tierlock's doing something cool. I like that move. I'm going to take that. Morgan Sheridan's doing something cool. I'm going to take that. And I just started incorporating everyone else's stuff into my program. But to do that and to teach that, you have to create a methodology. So I had to come up with foundations. And so I would start with footwork. Footwork is the basis of everything I do. And then from footwork is power generation, and you learn power generation and timing. And then you go from power generation and timing to shots and shot selection. And of course, you're teaching shots as that goes through, but you can't really string them together until you have those other things formulated. And so I did a lot of that through the late 80s. And then I developed some offside stuff that was a little unusual at the time. And was able to, and there were a lot of folks who thought that it was because I was some freak of nature that I was able to hit them in the armpits, but it was really just technique. So once other people started doing that same thing, suddenly, oh, it's not freak of nature stuff. It's, there's more than we all know. You don't learn sword fighting as a whole recreation of the entire history of sword fighting in 20 years of rattan fighting, right? So we're all just scratching the surface as we go through this. And then as we move into the 90s, we start seeing fight book stuff. I had a friend who had just at that point was working on the Talhofer stuff, and we're like, oh, that's cool. And so I started to try and incorporate medieval stuff into my SCA stuff way back then. Not really knowing what I was doing, but trying to, work it and incorporate it. But a lot of this is, stuff that you're bringing from the ground up. And of course, I went and I spent a little time learning some Arnis, so I could incorporate some of their footwork and some of their methodology into the things I do. And then, impart that on other people. And then we had a good string of success through the 90s with a lot of my students. They were winning tournaments, whether it was royal tournaments or local tournaments or sometimes inter-kingdom tournaments. But a lot of that it goes well beyond just the physical aspects of fighting, and the footwork and the timing and all that. It's also the whole mental piece. And you have to figure out the mentality of each of your students and what they're going to respond to. And so I started to figure out that and try to get my students to do the same thing with their students. So I always tried to pass what I knew down the chain so they could have success with their folks as quickly as possible. Hide nothing, show everything. There are no secrets in this stuff. Because everything that we learned from someone watching it somewhere. Even when we created ourselves, we figured it out because there were foundations for us to figure it out on. So you got to pass all that credit along, pass a lot of that to Farrell, because he had a learning, teaching mentality, and he got me while I was young and kind of, put that to me. And I have the utmost respect for what he did and guided me to be able to do. And I look at what I do now professionally as built on, the stuff that I learned coming out of the SCA. It didn't come out of a vacuum. This was learned, and it was a progression of things from SCA on into steel. And when I came into the steel world, we had, preconceived ideas of how steel was going to work, which some of it was right and a lot of it was wrong, because as you start incorporating a lot more martial arts into your fighting as opposed to just the weapons, it makes it a little more complicated. And some things.
No, are you talking about hand to hand and grappling and throwing?
Yeah, hand to hand, grappling, kicking, striking from behind. 60-second rounds where it's lots of strikes as opposed to one-shot striking. I'll trade off one shot to my head so I can get 5 in, right? So in steel, it's a whole different way of thinking. And your armor is used as armor, where in SCA, it's not really used as armor. All right, it's just there to protect us. It looks cool, but it's there to protect us. And in the other way, you use it, and because we're SCA is a one-strike group, right? One-strike game. Calibration is so important. Your honor is so important. Doing this all is to make sure you're super defensive and all that. That super patient game. It's different in the steel world, and I can get into more detail on that later. But we can back into SCA stuff because that's where we are today.
Okay. You had a couple of great things. I took some notes. A couple of things I'd really like to talk about is, and I think this is core for understanding, and that is work effort. That number one, right? You got to put the time in. You got to put the effort in, and not that effort's not only just going out there and busting your ass, right? You got to be reading, you got to be searching. It gets right back into later. After all, you get through all of this natural ability, then you're, hey, I create an offside shot, right? So you got to be creative, and you're thinking about it all the time. So that's all part of the work effort, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so you have to spend the time doing this. Nothing replaces work ethic. There are some talented people out there who just get beat by people who outwork them, right? And so we all have our different aptitudes and talents and all that, but work ethic is the one. And that might even be one of those aptitudes and talents, right? The ability to focus and do that. I'm an ADD guy, hyper focused. That's me. Woohoo!
Yeah, join the club. I got you there too, buddy.
The land of obsession.
I've been saying for a long time that training and technique trumps talent every time. If you take somebody who's just good and just talented, they are going to lose to the person that is putting in more work and actually puts in the technique. And in a lot of respects, the guy that puts in the technique has a better comprehension of the sport overall compared to the guy who is just doing it and they don't know why they're doing it.
I think some people come in and wherever they are, they might be the big fish really early, so they don't really need to develop it. And
Right.
So they operate based off of their preconceived ideas, their basic skills, and what they brought into it. And that's it. And then they go and they succeed, but they're in a small pool. And if they decide to travel out of it and they run into the people who work harder, now they're going to have that ego blow. Like, I just got my ass pounded by this guy because I should have beat him. Well, no, you shouldn't have. That guy outworked you. That guy understands that you only have a good snapshot. So all he's going to do is he's going to block this spot. He's run into fast people before. Right.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you 100%.
I think Brian covered some of this in the interview he did with Misty, where he was out here and won his first crown, and Brian was able to beat pretty much everybody at our practice very, very early on in his fighting career, and then he won crown out here in Aidenbelt, and then he went to Penzic and found out that there's a lot more to this than I thought there was. And his response to that was, I'm going to take, I'm going to fight the best people I can. I'm going to take my licks. I'm going to take my beatings, and I'm going to go home, and I'm going to work on this. And that's when he came home and he started showing us all the stuff that he got from Bedford and from Ronald and from Randall. He fought all those guys out there, and he brought it home, and he's like, this is what we're doing. And yeah, like you said, it's getting out into that pool. And yeah, Brian could have easily been one of those guys that felt really good about winning crown here, even a couple of times. But his response was very different.
I always looked to him for his work ethic and his adaptability. So yeah, he's a guy I gleaned a lot of things from. So
here's a question: how do you? I bring this up. I talk about it all the time. I'd rather get a guy who wins 30% of the time and loses 70 consistently than a guy who wins 70 and loses 30 inconsistently. Because the guy who wins 70% of the time, you can train them. As soon as they start losing, they go back to the old stuff. And at that training piece, the guy who's winning 30 consistently, he just keeps building. The next time it's 35%, and then it's 40%, and it's consistent through the whole thing. How do you take one of these guys and train him that he has to learn? He has to build that consistency and listen and put that work in.
So you got to break their ego, right? And you gotta understand. It's like breaking a horse, right? So some of these guys come in, they've got all this skill, and what I used to do was, all right, you're doing real good against those guys. Come fight with me over on the side, and I'd bring them over there and show them the things that he didn't know. And then if he didn't take that as I need to learn, then I'm not really going to spend any more time with him, right? Because he can't teach himself that he doesn't know what he doesn't know. Right? He's convinced that he already knows everything, and you can't teach people who know everything. So if you can break them out of that ego and realize, or, hey, you're doing really well against me. This is my buddy Stefan. Fight him for a few minutes. Right? And that's what was so great about, and is so great about the Penzic pickups. I would take every Penzic, my guys, And Brannos, you're there more than anybody, all right, or at least you used to be. My guys would all be out on that field,
Yep.
right? The ones that were hungry would be out on that field.
Yep.
And you guys would run them through the ringer, and they'd come back going, "Oh, I did really good against these Royals." Okay, good. But what did these guys do? Oh, they kicked my ass all over the place. I've got to work on this. And so they would start to work. Those who weren't ready for that ego hit wouldn't go to that field. So they didn't get all that learning that occurred there. And those same people are the ones who skip practice. So you know that that's the end of that. You don't have to spend a lot of time with them. There are people who are thirsting for knowledge. You only have so much time. Give it to the ones who are thirsty.
So I'm not sure if this was a question that came up, but if and it's not really, I'm going to state the question a little differently. They were talking about the, you know, what is commonly referred as funny foot forward and that big leaning offside stuff you throw. And,
yeah, goofy foot and all
yeah,
that.
all of that, whatever you want to call it. But let's base this. Let's break this down even more. If someone was to be fighting someone with that style, what do you think the weaknesses are? So, you know, I ask straight out because you're going to push the guys. You tell the weaknesses and people can start looking at them and pushing these guys even farther, right?
I think the weaknesses are that it's less defensive. So if you are in an offside lead, whether you're left-handed or right-handed, you've now exposed your leg forward, and you are now given more target area for your opponent to strike. If I'm, right leg back, I'm behind my shield, my legs covered, right? I'm in a lot more safe position. However, you also lose range. So once you swap those feet, your range is increased by the width of the center of your neck to the outside of your shoulder when you swap the legs, or about the width or the length of your foot, right? That's really about what that is. And that changes so much of the fight. So people who rely on that will have a hard time swapping back because they get so used to that heavy offense that when they run into someone who's got a good offense that can capitalize on it, then they take that leg, they're down on their knees and they're out. So that's really that weak spot with that. I try to cheat that by positioning of my left arm or my shield. I move the shield out, rotate myself just a little bit as if I'm fighting a lefty. So if I know someone's got a good, strong offense, I fight them as if I'm fighting a left-handed fighter with the right leg lead.
Hey, Lucan, along those lines, when you were out here in 2011, I seem to remember you saying that you fight sword leg lead almost exclusively. Is that still the case, or did I misunderstand that?
No, I do it mostly exclusively because I have a good leg defense. I've got a good offense. I've got good timing. So I know if I'm leaving that leg out there for you and you go for it, you're going to give me something. And my range is long enough and I've got good measure. I try to make sure that I am just where I want to be. And because I use a 39 or 38 inch total length sword, not only do I have the length of that sword, but I have that length of, that goofy foot forward additionally. So I've got over a foot of extra range. So that gives me that millisecond to get my defense because you've got to make that distance change. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know. I use the right leg lead or sword leg lead. Like I use them 50-50, like interchangeably, and it largely depends on the circumstances. But I think what you're talking about, especially with that leg, because you put that leg out there and it is exposed. It's one of those things where knowing that it's exposed allows you to account for the danger of it being exposed. Because I know with me fighting with a shorter shield now, I use a 30-inch heater now. And both my legs are pretty well exposed. And, I know when I get somebody that kind of targets in and, you get that body language where they say, oh, I bet I can get that leg. Like the next thing I do is flare that out a little bit more and like feed it to them, because they've already decided that that's where they want to go. And so if I can feed that to them and encourage them to do what they already want to do, then I'm halfway ahead of the game.
Yeah, I think the interesting part there is we're getting back to another conversation we had about speed, weeks ago. And would you consider yourself super fast, or do you consider yourself a just impeccable timer?
Me, I don't consider myself fast at all. I think I'm right across the middle of the speed range. I've got really good measure. Yep. So that's the thing that I think sets me apart from a lot of other fighters.
Yeah, and I think describe yourself, Sean. One of the lessons that I learned with Aikido, they call this Shoto Aseizu, which is control the first move. What you're describing is a perfect control of the first move. You're actually setting up the landscape for you to invite the commitment to a certain shot, in this case to your leg, where you can account for it because you've taken your defense and shifted it to cover what looks like an opening, but you've kind of closed it up. Really, you're deceiving your opponent by showing an
absolutely deception
that isn't really there. All warfare is deception, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're coiled and ready with a long range attack when they decide that commitment, and you can exploit it. Would you say that's a good?
Yeah, it is. Except there's one piece to that, and that is by having the right leg forward, I can take a step with my left leg. And because I can take that step, I can close range almost instantly and get that offside.
Sure.
I can get the offside all the way up the blade based on where I step on that diagonal on that 45 with my left leg. So if they come in on me, I can slide out. If they come in on me to the right of my, basically more to my right side, I can step in and I am right behind them. Right? I can take a long step and hit them in the back in the kidney, or I can take a shorter step and go to the armpit ribs, as I come into there, just by a quick step with that left leg. So it's loaded to step for that counter when needed.
Sure. Yeah, and as you describe this, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking like, "What, Lucan? Why would you be describing how to take you down? Like you're giving the formula of the secret sauce here." And there's a big difference between being able to say it and being able to do it.
I've got my 10,000 hours of reps.
Exactly. There's a huge difference there. You invest in the time to be able to do it. Just because you know how the magic trick's done doesn't mean that you can't be fooled by it. So it doesn't matter that you know what somebody like Lucan's doing. You have to put the time in to have that full response, to be able to see it, acknowledge it, and respond correctly. If you don't do that, you can hear the description and go, "Oh yeah, I know how to beat him. I know exactly how to beat him." It won't do you any good until you put in the practice to actually do it.
And I think there's the key, right? And to tell you the truth, I think Lucan's sitting there waiting for somebody to come beat him because he wants to learn something, right? I mean,
I do.
More power. That comes back to your other comment, man. Train what you know.
Yeah, and that goes back to something we talked about last week on the episode on training. I'm not trying to teach you good enough to beat somebody else. I'm trying to teach you well enough to beat me. And if I tell you how to beat me and you become a better fighter because of that, I have to become a better fighter in response. And that is what I always refers to as the evolution of our sport, right? Our sport.
That's my goal too, is the evolution of our sport. The evolution of the sport is far more important than whether I win or you win. It's right. Did we learn, and now are we passing that along? And this stuff disappeared for a long time, and I don't want to see it go away anytime soon. It's been a cornerstone of my life, and we've got to get this stuff to pass on. Here's our immortality right here.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, it's like, wouldn't you think that the fighting today should be better than it was 53 years ago in the backyard in Berkeley, California? And, obviously the answer to that is yes, but to a lesser degree, the sport in every aspect should be better now than it was 20 years ago. And even, to a lesser degree, even still 5 years ago.
5 years. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And it has to keep getting better. And I think it has for sure, but that's part of it is guys like us saying, here's this thing that I'm doing. So punish me for it. So
if there was one link between, and this is a great conversation. I love this topic.
Yeah, make me learn.
So many people that say, I'm coming in new to this sport, and I'm seeing these guys have been doing this for 25, 30 years. How on earth can I ever be competitive with them? Like, I'm doing this maybe twice a week. How can I catch up with somebody who's got, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 hours of training time? They're the best of the best. I've seen those people get demoralized. Like they get, oh God, I'll never be able to do what they can do. But they're so hardcore with their training. They're so dedicated. How can I keep up? And
Work ethic.
I think the answer to that is, one is these people want to give you a shortcut. They want to give you the benefit of their experience, and to help you get to the point where they took 5 years to get. They want to be able to help you get there in 1 year or a year and a half. So all of the people that have gone through that level of training, in my opinion, in my experience, are selfless. They will say, I want you to be better. I felt that way myself. Like I learned the hard way. I had a really hard road to have to do everything myself. For everybody that came to me and said, Tristan, I want to have at least a little bit of talent. What can you do for me? Like, I want to have you in 6 months get the experience it took me 5 years to get. And when that happens, you realize you're the one with 6 months experience, realize there's a bunch of people pulling for you. They want to help you. And that's kind of what this channel is about. How do we get you to that point in a year that took us 5 years to get? And so everybody, we want to pull those people into that higher level of experience, that higher level of skill sooner, with the least amount of frustrating waste of time. And I went through a lot of the go into the pool and just figure it out. Mm-hmm. That is just a poor way of teaching. It's a poor way of
I was just going to say the same thing. I was going to say that one of the things that has slowed the evolution of SCA fighting is the lack of consistent drilling.
I agree.
If everyone wants to fight, so we all want to fight, and so fight practices become all these guys go smash each other for a couple hours, right? And if those practices could be a little more structured, more aimed at specific things, like, hey guys, today we're going to work on legs, right? And then you work on leg drills, right? Or, today we're going to work on combinations. Today we're going to work on shield blocks, or we're going to work on a mullion out of the A guard, right? Whatever it is that you're working on, you create drills for it, and then you drill it again and again and again to get those reps. And then you can put it into sparring practice. That's how do they do it in boxing?
Same thing, man. I agree 100%.
All right. So our methodology across the board as martial arts instructors, which is what we are supposed to be, knights are supposed to be a level of martial arts instructor. We should start teaching this as if it's a martial art. And I know it's not as fun sometimes to work hard, right? And to go to the gym, but we should be going to the gym too, right? If we want to take it to the next level, we should be going to the gym. So we should be taking it more seriously from a nutritional standpoint, from a training standpoint, from a drilling standpoint, to get better at this.
Mentoring standpoint.
From a what?
From a
mentoring standpoint?
It's one thing to be technically good. It's a whole nother set of skills to be able to transfer what you know to somebody else.
Yep, to learn how to teach it. And here at the school, and actually in VDK, we created, the way we taught it was, okay, these are your guys, you're responsible for those, right? You're responsible for teaching them, but if you're having troubles, I'm here. I can't tell you how many grand squires I worked with on a regular basis, or great grand squires, as often as I could. Worked with everybody I could from, I don't care what group they were in, as long as they weren't over thick, I was good with it. But methodology was started then. I would teach footwork, I would teach drills. I had a heavy bag out floating in my yard for pals, for a pal out there. I would convince folks to get a heavy bag, and back then those heavy rubber bats that were for softball, they had neoprene on the outside of them.
Yep.
Those for Pell work inside, get the time on the Pell. Oh, I can't sit up a Pell. Can you put something in your basement? Can you put it in your garage? Right? Can you put it in your dorm room? Right? Whatever you can do to get a place where you can practice consistently, because that's really the key, is consistent practice, so you don't have to go relearn it 6 months down the road.
I think you got the key there, right? You're talking to Tristan asked, hey, how do I catch up to these guys with 20, 30 years in? And tell you the truth, I think there's a ton of space to do it, because to tell you the truth, we took the long way there, right?
Yeah.
And it goes right to what Tristan said. And, if you look at even the top guys, I mean, these guys, very few of them are weight training. Very few of them are doing, running and doing other work to be real athletes. Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't necessarily, if you get 2 practices in a week, you're like a top guy.
I practiced 3 days a week, 3 days a week. And when I first went on my first crown, I was doing jump rope a couple hours a day, right? I can't do that today. I'm 54, right? But when I was 20, 21, 22 years old, I could do that, forever. And so when I was 22, I started following Dr. Haas's diet, the Eat to Win diet. So I started doing that. I started doing real training back then with, so I always considered myself the blind kid with asthma and scoliosis, right? And so I always looked at myself as, a non-athlete trying to compete with people who didn't have all these defects in themselves. Teddy Roosevelt was my icon, because he was an asthmatic who did a bunch of stuff. So I'm an asthmatic who wanted to do a bunch of stuff. And so he was my guy. But I always had this negativity towards myself and what I could do, but I knew that I could outwork anyone. And so that's what I did. I tried to outwork everyone. And so I practiced 3 days a week and went to an event on Saturday. Yana was just reminiscing the other day about the years where we would do 40 plus events a year.
Yeah, exactly.
I was everywhere, right? Trying to test myself. And there was a couple of years where I came in second place every damn event. Second place, second place, second place, second place. And I'm going to reveal this to everyone because it's no big deal. As I said, Farrell, what do I do to stop coming in second place? He said, oh, quit smoking weed. He goes, you're always that half second off. Like, all right. And I quit. And then suddenly it was like tournament. Like, hey, he knew what I was supposed to do.
Yep. I guess, on that point, and this is one of these points that was brought up at the very beginning when Tristan and Sean and I got together. And, we were originally talking about making this a training, site where people learn to train better. And my big point was, I want people to learn to be better coaches too, because training and coaching can be 2 different things.
Definitely.
In your case, you had Farrell. He was, hey, quit the weed, man. That's coaching, right?
Yep, that was good coaching. Absolutely.
So I think it's been nice that we've been able to point some of those things out, and I hope people are listening and trying to find those people that can fill that space for them, because that coaching level pushes you to the next level, right? It's like, hey, what the hell are you doing out there? It's like, hey, kick it up. Hey, that guy, take a look. I watched him fight. Look for this and this weakness. Maybe you didn't have time. All of those pieces fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's the next level that we need to think about, because otherwise we're going to sit on that old level forever.
Well, so
one of the best phrases that I ever heard for this was, "Are we seeing the very best you can do right now?" When somebody says, "I'm frustrated," I don't know why I'm stumbling. Like, is this your very best? And you ask them, and they think for a second. They go, "No, it's not." Then show me your best.
there's your answer right there.
Yep.
Show me your best. If this isn't it, let's take it. Let you go to the next level. I can't do it for you. You got to take it up.
Yeah, I agree with that. Coaching though, and coaching and training, not everyone that is a good trainer is also a good coach.
I agree.
And not everyone who's a good fighter will ever become a trainer or a coach, right?
Yep.
So they're all different skills, and you have to spend time working on all of them. And sometimes I've been a decent coach, and sometimes I've been a crappy coach because I didn't figure it out, what that person needed in the moment to help them pass that next path. Or I considered myself that. It's not really always on you, but I take training and coaching pretty seriously. It's now what I do for a living, and I take a lot of pride in it. So that coaching piece, I'm watching it develop amongst my professional students who are now trainers, and some of them, are really good in the gym, and then others are the guys that I want coaching them. So the tasks get separated.
What would you say are the best descriptors of the difference? What are you looking for the difference between a good trainer and a good coach?
So a good trainer, I believe a good trainer knows what needs to be trained. They know the techniques, they know the physicality, they understand it, they know how to work on timing and measure and all that. But a coach knows what motivates the fighter, or knows what they need to do to help them through the situation. And so I think the coach needs more vision of things around them. So it's not just the X's and O's, but the intangibles that go with it as well. And so
basically what you're talking about is the connection to the student,
connection to the student is the big one. Like Brennan, I know what motivates Brennan when he was moving his way up. Now he's a Duke in his own. He's kicking butt and doing great things. And a lot of it super remote. Like, I don't have a lot of credit to take with Brennan. He was in Jersey at Nutley. I could coach him, but I couldn't train him regularly.
Mm-hmm. I guess there's a perfect example. I mean, I've got some guys in Sweden that I've been working with and stuff like that. And, one of them got knighted before I even met him. But, the idea is you don't need to be their trainer necessarily. You can pass some techniques, you can videotape, you can do all of those pieces. But to drive somebody, that's where that coaching piece, and know how to drive them with positive or negative sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to find that perfect space. And work that and push them and
the
make
thing
them
they're going to identify with.
And make them believe. Them believe they can do it and that they want it. That's the amazing thing.
I think all of us, I know Brannos and I have, and I'm pretty sure Lucan has too. We've got that guy who is not anywhere part of our lineage. I mean, we get random Facebook message all the time. Hey man, can you help me with my fight? Yeah, no problem. And
I still get them.
Yeah, we do, and having it at that level where somebody's already knighted and they've been to the finals of Crown several times, and they're trying to make that next push, and I think that's where the most of what we do is coaching at that point, because they obviously they have the physical skills necessary to compete at the highest level of our sport. And it's just a matter of, for me, I refer to it as picking the lock. Like, what do I need to do? I was like, well, what are your motivations? What is your background? And and just trying to work working through stuff and helping them pick and lock and helping them find their own answers. And yeah, as a coach, even, long distance, that's something that is pretty easy to do. I mean, I say easy, it's none of it's really easy, but it is definitely feasible for us to do coaching at that level where, I don't necessarily have to be fighting you in an area where I have to put hands on you. Because, especially at the crown level, crown is not a physical test. It's a mental exercise. And so being able to work somebody, through the mental parts of that fight, yeah, we can easily, especially with the tools we have now, God, YouTube and Facebook and now Zoom and everything. It's like, there's so much work that we can do.
One of the best
just
pieces of
online
SCA coaching.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the best pieces of SCA coaching I witnessed was not done by a fighter. Kenrick was in the finals against Ed Gray and had given up. And Mark Squirrelsbane, if you know him, the archer, goes, "Hey, I'll just go put your stuff in a car now. You want me to just go pack it up?"
Oh, yeah.
And it fired him up. And Kenrick won his first crown and got through that block. He'd been in the finals 4 or 5 times before that. And, but that got him. And then that was the trigger. And after that, there was no stopping him. But that was Mark. Mark did that. He's responsible for that.
Yeah, that's very cool. And that's a great point of motivation, right? We have just because I want to make sure we're getting our guys their questions. So we had a question. He said, most of us aren't knights or royal peers. When would any of you give fighting advice? Must it be solicited? So I think that's and I guess this is that question. It's like, here we are sitting. If we're and we've done this, right? You're sitting around the same group of people out on the field doing pickups. We're hanging out on the hay bales, talking about. We're not talking about who's getting knighted and who's doing this and who's doing that. We're all brothers of arms, just enjoying talking, fighting.
We're geeking it out.
You're geeking it out, just like everybody else. And I think there's still that place, and a lot of us are just friends. I mean, all of a sudden, me and Lucan are walking around. We got this big gap between us and everybody else because it's like, oh, I don't want to go talk to them. They're big and scary, and I think how do we break that down? Is this how do we talk to these people who are asking questions like that? Does it have to be solicited? I'd say it can be, and we are all open for it. Would you guys agree there?
Oh, absolutely. Anyone wants, I'll answer anyone's questions if I can. If I have the answer, I'll answer, and if I don't know the answer, I'll try to find someone who can answer it for them. But really, I think that's part of the social problem of SCA is our titles, right? And our titles get in the way of us as teachers or access to us as teachers because people don't think that they have the right to ask you. And there are people who are telling them that they don't have the right to answer as well. Tell those people to shut the hell up because all of us want to answer those questions.
When I see that question that was posed, the way that I see it feels to me like somebody says, well, maybe I'm a squire, I'm not even a squire, but I know a couple of things, maybe I can help somebody, but I'm only a squire, I'm not a squire yet. Why would anybody listen to me? And this is something that, boy, my 25 plus years in the SCA, the best answer came when I actually went to Aikido, and my instructor said, you might be a yellow belt, you might be a blue belt or something, but if you know one thing, just teach that one thing. If you can help one person with the one thing that you know how to do, and it may only be one of two things, you don't need to be a duke, you don't need to be a knight to help somebody out who may be struggling. And I think the big thing comes with the air or the atmosphere that you pose when you try to help somebody. You can say, well, listen to me because I'm a big shot. Well, if you're a squire or you're not even a squire yet, you can't say, well, I'm a big shot, so you should listen to me. But if you go over and explain to somebody, hey, I see something you might be struggling with, maybe I can help you. I'd love to help you be better. Just let me throw you this thing, work on it. Try it out, see what you think of it. It's not so much what you do, it's how you do it.
How you approach it.
how you approach it. Exactly. If you have the right attitude and you say, I want to help you, I see you struggling a little bit, maybe just try this out and see what you think of it. Be humble in your presentation. Be ready to accept that somebody might not be receptive to you offering your assistance to them. And this can happen between nights. It can happen between royal peers. You know, the mindset of the person who's receiving the advice and the mindset of the person who's giving the advice can be destructive in any kind of combination. And there's countless combinations that can lead to, well, what the hell are you telling me how to fight? Well, who the hell are you? You know, that's all ego poisoning your ability to learn, whether you're not the mentor or the student. Even in that one moment, we have one thing that you might be able to share to somebody. And I've seen squires that have got great stuff that could show a duke something he doesn't know how to do yet. Is their mind open to it? Is their cup empty? And they said, I want you to put something in my cup. Maybe I can take something and make something of that and learn something and be better than I was. As long as their ego doesn't say, I'm a duke, you're a squire, what have you got to teach me?
I think there's a responsibility for the peers in general to create a learning culture.
Exactly. Very well said.
And we've got to have a learning culture and realize that peer-to-peer training is important too. So peer-to-peer is important, and everyone has something that they can offer, right? And advice is advice. You take it and you can take it and accept it, or toss it over your shoulder, or put it away in your pocket because down the road you might need it. And that's my preferred. If I don't see a purpose now, maybe I'll see something with it later and may apply for somebody else down the road. So I try to learn as much as I can. I try not to be as ego filled as people might think, right? Right? You've got to glean from everybody. I try to learn from, and I said that earlier, I glean. When I glean, I'm saying I'm learning. Like I see them doing something, I want that. I'm going to try and learn how to do that. And I'm going to bring that in, and then I'm going to give that to everyone else I can give it to.
You know, an invaluable phrase that I heard many years ago was that even a fool can speak wisdom. Even 80% of the stuff that comes out of the fool's mouth seems foolish and ridiculous. And you just like, what are you talking about? But he can even trip on a truth. And this can really hurt your ego sometime to say, you know, that idiot might have a point there. And for you to have a mindset that says, even though the source might lack credibility, let me give some merit to this and actually examine it carefully before I reject it. And I think that that's a way to look at everything that you see from somebody who tries to offer you advice. Say, you know what, before I reject this, let me just consider it. You may reject it even after a minute or two worth of thought because your experience says, hey, that what he's showing is got some problems. But you never know that if he's willing to share that, consider it. Just at least give it some thought. I think has some intellectual integrity.
Well, there's another question. Let's turn this on its head a little bit, and I would agree. One thing I would really like to comment on, and if we don't get a chance to talk about it, I think it's still something great that we maybe talk about later. It's one thing I agree with you, Lucan, is titles do actually hurt us in training sometimes because people are afraid of talking to people like that, and we set classes apart, and that's a very difficult situation in training. The second piece is remember that not everybody is ready to get advice at that time. In other words, they could be working on something else. And so you have to be very careful when you do when you go to ask somebody, ask them, hey, I noticed something. Would you like to learn? Can we talk about it?
That's an important, really important thing to say. It's like getting permission to touch,
yes.
Right? It's permission to exchange ideas. Mm-hmm. Are you ready for an exchange of ideas?
Yep. Right. And that goes to the next question. The only reason why I wanted to finish this is another question. That goes to this next question is what happens when somebody's giving you the wrong advice or just leading you down the wrong path and are constantly trying to give you advice that really isn't helpful.
Yeah, that question that came in. What do you do when you see somebody giving poor advice? And this kind of goes to my point on both sides of this. Is I I'm somewhat hesitant to offer advice unsolicited, and and that's kind of some experience from a while back where I was traveling quite a bit early on as a trainer, traveling to other places to kind of help people with their fighting. And some of the feedback that I got back was that he just came out here and he wanted to kick our ass just so he could feel better about himself, and that kind of turned me off a little bit. So I'm somewhat hesitant to offer unsolicited advice. I am more than happy to give, I'll feed you like you're drinking from a fire hose if it's something that you want. But I'm really, really hesitant because, as I think Lucan said, you don't know who wants it and who wants it and who doesn't. And generally the people that have proven to me through their effort that they want that advice, it only takes a couple of interactions for me to know that it's like, okay, this is somebody I worked with before. They are open to the input. They're going to go home and do the work. And so I know that I can walk up in the middle of this fight and say, here, try this and try this. But generally speaking, I don't go up to random fighter and say, let me solve all your problems. And so I am hesitant to offer that unsolicited on both sides of this. The second part of this question that came in, what do you see when you see somebody getting poor advice? I am hesitant to contradict other trainers, especially if it is somebody that is in a student-teacher relationship, like a Night Squire relationship. It's so and honestly, sometimes you can't save them all, and so sometimes when you see something that I don't think is going to work for somebody, I don't know that it's really my position, my place to just barge in here and say, well, again, let me come in here and fix all your problems because your trainer is wrong.
Yeah, that's a real tough one. I don't think when I was younger that I gave a shit about what their night thought. Right. I would just give unsolicited advice. When I was younger, that was it. It was like, you might want to move like this a little bit and try to give pointers. As I aged, I learned that unsolicited advice, sometimes it's not even worth it. Right. Like, that you're going to give this guy advice. He's getting bad training from someone. You're going to give advice and it's just going to go out the window anyway. So you're like, okay, I'm not even going to bother with these particular set of people. In the real world, where I'm at now, I'm the head trainer. I'm responsible for all of this. But what I'll do is if someone's teaching, I will slip that into one of my instructors to go, hey, you might want to look at this, and have them do it. Right, and have them do the coaching and the change. Or you've got someone who's got developing habits, right? And you talk to this. I've got 5 instructors here, so I talk to all of them about each student and try to tailor some of the work for the students that are struggling. Like, okay, this is what they're experiencing. These are the things that need to be done. So I don't always have to go give the advice. It just passes through if I see it.
And with that, you're giving, you're providing a path to the trainer who has a relationship with the student, right? So which is very different from you coming in and saying, like, again, you can't fix all the problems and you don't have time to in that environment. You don't have the time to go to everybody and say, well, and it undermines the trainer as well.
Right.
So if when you're talking to it, it's much easier when you can talk directly to the trainer where they have that relationship with the student. And I'll definitely do that if I see somebody fight and I know that they're squired to somebody that I know, I'll drop by and say, hey, you might want to have them look at this, and then and that encourages them as a trainer as well. It makes them a better
I was
trainer.
going to just
where
say
you
that
can-
it makes them a better trainer.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can
because
just
now
kind
they're going
of
to look for it.
wreck that. Yeah.
Now they're going to look for it.
One of the
And,
things, and I noticed this along in a dojo seminar, and I went through this myself, and I've seen many of students go through the same thing where they're worried about, I'm working with a partner, I want to give them advice, but I don't want it to be the wrong advice. I want, and I've been that guy myself. Like, I'm going to give you the advice that I had at the time, which I learned much later was wrong. And I think building the expectation is a good way to solve that problem, and that is, make sure it's clear with every student. What you're shown at a given point, you might have to reject later. You might find that there's a better way to do the same thing that you're trying to do, or you might have to unlearn this very thing that you're learning today. The idea
but you
that
need to learn this thing so you can learn these next series of things.
right, the idea that your training is completely linear, that everything you learn on a certain moment is going to be consistent for the rest of your fighting is incorrect. You're going to have to go back and update what you learned. You're going to have to reject a habit you built or a pattern that you've ingrained in yourself. You have to be ready to be an adaptable enough athlete to change and update when you come upon new information, either from your own instructor who's found out a better way to teach you, from another instructor who's got something else to offer you. It's not that you want to build a firm program that is completely rigid and inflexible. That's not as much of a quality fighter as somebody who can say, I'm taking in something new and I'm going to adapt. I'm going to adapt and be better because I've changed. I can change what I've done rather than stick to a firm program that I learned once 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and I'm just going to stay with it. Like, that's to me, the mindset that makes a really great fighter, one that can learn, not just one that sticks with a pattern. And the same thing goes through the mentor. As a mentor, you're going to teach somebody something shitty that's not going to work. I just guarantee it. Now, the longer you do it, the less you're going to do that, but get over it. Just say, you know what? Don't get so stuck on what I told you a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Here's what I want you to do now. Do it this way, this time. And as a student, be ready to adapt. As a mentor, be ready to say, I'm not perfect. I might show you something today that in 2 weeks, a month, a year, 2 years, I'm going to change.
Figure out a better way to do it.
I found a better way to do it, and I'm going to deliver that better way to do it. And I've found many different martial arts instructors that are so stuck in the old way to do it, that they just keep teaching that. And if something better comes up, their ego refuses to accept it, and they're going to get stuck. And their students are going to get stuck, and everybody that's associated with them is going to get stuck. The best, in my opinion, the best way to do it is say, something new comes along, let's adapt it. I don't care if I'm the mentor. I've seen this. I think this works better. Let's do it. Let's change. If your students are ready for that mentally, they're ready to adapt. They're ready to change. They're ready to adopt something new. They're going to be ahead of the curve. They're going to be on that innovation side of the art, not on the stagnation side of trailing behind what's worked a long time ago.
Well, and sometimes there's more than one way to do a thing, right? Yeah. And so if you're trying to teach along a methodology, let's say that you're teaching them a string of motions, so they're going to go from the offside to the onside to a wrap, and they're going to move from all these positions. So you're going to teach them each stage of this, and it's going to be somewhat mechanical. And then once they figure out flow, now what you had to do mechanically before might be a little different, because now that your body's in motion, you don't have to do these extra things you can just pull them out, because now your body's in flow, and you don't have to take a step here to do this, because now your body's moving that way. You can just roll to it. And so
one thing I've noticed is
get stuck in the
being
mechanics.
a really good fighter or really good martial artist, it's not so much how can you learn, is how much can you forget? How much can you leave behind as you bring on new things and adapt to a new level of function? Like what you talked about with the flow, the difference between going from mechanical into flow. You have to forget a lot of the mechanical in order to get to the flow.
Mhm.
You have to forget a lot of the physical to go to the mental stage. And then you have to forget a lot of the mental stage to go to the spiritual stage. If you hold on to those things at the lower levels, you can never go to the upper levels. You're almost like putting a ceiling on your own development.
Yep, I would agree. Hey, we're kind of burning through time, and we still have a little bit of time, and we'll push it off a little bit since we started a little late. But I'm gonna kind of switcheroo on the subjects here a little bit, although that was a really great one. If you were to bring training to the SCA based on what you have learned now through having your own studio and having your own, developing the whole sport and style,
All right,
and
you're
all
dragging
the
a little
things
bit
you
there.
did. Oh,
Question,
so
you got frozen on my screen.
okay, let's do it again. So having owned a studio now and having trained a lot of people and learned to develop this even better, what would you bring back to the SCA and how would you do that?
What I would bring back is what I was talking about earlier, is I would bring back, for one, I'd bring back lots of drilling. I would focus on a lot of different mechanical drills. I'd also bring fitness back in because you want to be a better fighter, you need to have a better machine, and your body's that machine. So let's build our bodies, and then let's do this with a more methodical way of training people in a less chaotic environment. So a lot more structure to the training program. And then the other thing is I would have people using boffers too. Because for one, boffers are faster than sticks.
Amen, man.
Right? They're faster than sticks. So you learn faster reflexes. They're so much faster, in fact. You don't get injuries as often at practice. Those bruises that we were all so proud of when we were new, right? Where you were talking about us learning the hard way. Those are things we learned the hard way. Even though that body hardening is really good for us and has really served me well doing the things I do today. And I'm not saying that we don't have body hardening, but I think you'd have a faster skill set upgrade by doing more fighting. And those little niggling injuries that you get from rattan slow you down. And then the other thing is you can learn a lot of things not in armor. So a lot more training out of armor would happen. So those are things that I would bring back with me. And it doesn't mean that I'm not coming back, by the way. Just means that I have to make this so lucrative that I can afford to.
I totally agree, man. Totally agree.
We had talked last week on the episode. I made a comment that with us all being kind of shut down and not being able to do practice, I don't know that there has been a better time for somebody to actually learn our sport from the ground up. Because you have this time to do pell work, you have this time to do footwork drills. There's so many things you can do out of armor when you can't be fighting, that when you get to practice and when you're actually fighting somebody and they are trying to do you bodily harm, there's a lot of adrenaline and cortisol and emotion that goes into that complicates you being able to simply execute the foundational principles of the sport. Where if we could, I think this may be a way that we could train better. And this kind of goes to what you were talking about. It's like you build the skills, take the time to build the skills without fighting as like a critical component of it, without it being a critical success factor, if you will, and build those skills for, if we were to take the time to build somebody's skills for even just 6 months, what we can teach somebody in 6 months so that when they do go to actually fight, those things are already pretty well ingrained. They're not, it's going to take more than 6 months, but the basic skills are going to be pretty well ingrained. And then you put them in front of somebody who's trying to hit them with sticks. And they can deal with that emotional component a lot better because they already have the foundational skills. And I think this is a great time, honestly, to learn our sport from the ground up.
I agree with you there. The other part of that is, as we were talking about in green screen before, there are a lot of successful SCA fighters who came out of the foam world, and anyone who says, "Oh, LARP," and pushes that off to the side, right? Well, most of these LARPs aren't really LARPs anymore. They're not doing a lot of role playing. They fight. They're really battle LARPs where they're doing.
No, we're losing you there. I don't get your audio.
Injury. Spend actually situation that I need to be able to be ready for. And the more of them that you experience, the better fighter you're going to be. So if we're putting them through a proper training regimen where they're drilling a lot, they're getting their pel work in, they're getting their combinations in, they're doing some sparring, they do the sparring with the soft stuff, and then do the rattan as well. Right? I'm not saying stop doing rattan for training. I'm saying supplement it into the program along with it. And I know Brannos has been doing that for, 4 or 5 years now? And so those guys are, and no one can argue with the success of Dark Yard, right? No one can argue with that. So it's working there. It's worked in Onstiora. It's all over. You look wherever you've got these guys who came out of Amp-Guard or DAG or Bell, and they're successful. Why? Well, they didn't get beat up in a backyard with rattan. They learned it before. They came in with skills, and then they were enhanced with rattan and armor, and now they're applying those skills. And it takes a little while. When I came from SCA to doing steel, it took me about a year and a half to adapt to it, from SCA to that. And it was a year and a half of a lot of work to make that transition. Those transitions for foam are going to be faster into rattan, in my experience.
I would even equate it to a boxer who, if you go learn boxing, they're not going to put you without headgear, without body protection in a sparring match with an experienced boxer. You're gonna have extra gear to make sure you're not getting hurt, to get your basics down before you're put into a competitive match without protective gear. So that's the value I always saw with the boffer stuff, the foam stuff. It lets more people participate and get the technique down without going home going, oh my God, I just feel like I got dragged behind a car, and that's a more.
I'll add to that though, that they've got to wear the helmets. So if you're going to do the sparring, wear the helmet. There are good helmets out there. If anyone needs to know where to get those, I can steer you in that direction. But we don't want to have a lot of concussion, right? We want to keep our heads all nice and safe. So we want to get good helmets, and not just any helmet will do, even for boffers, because you can hit pretty hard with them as well, even though they're made out of foam. All of us can hit and probably hurt people with boffers, and we don't want to do that. The point of this is not to hurt each other. The point of this is to teach each other. And so it's important that for those at home that want to do that type of thing, that they do it the right way. And if anyone's looking to go to sparring with boffer stuff to supplement their SCA training, I'm more than happy to help you out with that.
Well, and I think a big factor is having fun. A number of fighters throughout the years have always, when they hear about people starting out with boffer, like, well, they're just not tough enough. They're not a badass like me. And the idea of, if you are trying to cultivate recruits that are badasses, that don't care about pain, which is a pretty small market, then you're going to get those people by saying you got to jump right into rattan and you're going to get bruised up and banged up because you don't know what you're doing yet. But you're going to have a much larger group of people that say, I'm willing to learn this and I'm eager to learn this. If I'm not just being brutalized every week, I can learn it and have a good time, enjoy myself. And, you know, I remember for 3 or 4 years,
New person attrition
on my left side because my left hip was just raked over every practice. You kind of got to be, and I think Brannos told me this years ago, you kind of got to be a bit of a masochist to go through that route of willing to have your body bashed up and pretty much hurt every week and keep going. I think we lose a lot of people because of that. Whereas
we do
allow you to expand that group of people that are willing to come back and say, hey, I had a good time. You know, I'm not in pain. I like doing this, and you'll get them to the point where they can transition to rattan fairly seamlessly.
You can even do this in your SCA armor. You just use rattan use boffers in your SCA armor.
Sure.
You know, you can do that. It's just the boffers don't last as long.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of what Tristan's talking about is the certain comfort level for your risk, right? You know, I've been saying since you know, you guys started up with the ACL stuff that buffer is to SCA as SCA is to ACL. There are people that do buffer stuff that are not comfortable with the level of injury risk that we have with rattan combat. And for those people that are, they're kind of like, oh, they get started on this foam stuff, and you know, I get to hit people with foam, and it's like, oh, I can do this with sticks and actual armor, and then they kind of graduate to rattan. And then likewise, there are people that have been doing rattan for a long time. I mean, most of the first ACL team was all former SCA guys, you know. And they say, oh, well, you know, I've been doing this with rattan for a while. It's like, you mean I can do this with real steel and real armor? And you know, if that is within your comfort level, then that's certainly something you should do. You know, when you came out here and did class for us right before you guys went to Poland the first time, 2011, you know, I'd asked you, so what's the injury rate on this live steel thing? And your answer to me was high.
Yep.
And you know, that's not within my comfort level.
It's much lower
I don't
now,
have the
by the
income.
way.
I'd imagine. I mean, you know, you've found better armor. I mean, because I've seen you guys went from, you know, some of the heavier steel stuff to spring steel, and you found better materials, and yeah, I can imagine. But the time, the money, the risk of injury are just not within my comfort level. And I feel like I'm making better contributions to the society than I could necessarily to ACL lifesteal combat.
Sure.
And honestly, the part of it that really intrigues me is the single combat stuff. I'm really not at all interested in the melee combat that happens at the level. It's just the victory conditions are just kind of like not within my wheelhouse, and that's the thing.
It's kind of brutal.
Like, if you're going to do boffer, you could, yeah. I mean, if you're doing boffer, you're doing rattan, you're doing live steel, you're going to do whatever is within your comfort level to do.
Yep.
None of these things are mutually exclusive. They all, I think, you know, provide different benefits, having done one or the other. And to exclude any of them for the sake of, you know, purity, if you will,
vanity,
I think is short-sighted. That's short-sighted at best.
So it was kind of funny is once steel started, there was that same kind of down the nose look that for a lot of time SCA did to foam coming out of steel and at rattan, and like, no guys, we're all the same, right? We're just at various levels of risk, right, and levels of intensity. But it's fighting is fighting is fighting, isn't that what Fiore said? Right? And so we're all learn how to fight, and we're just going to take it from one to the next to the next. But what I learned here was that we were too hardcore, and that we weren't training people because our level of injury was too high. So I started doing the foam stuff back in 2015 to mitigate that here in my school. We weren't great at it. We were still hurting each other doing that because our equipment wasn't good enough for handling punching and all that stuff. But getting back to doing SCA, I think there are things that SCA can do to help its new people come up faster with less attrition. And I think this is one of the training things that can be done to help along that line.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, because when we first started Coach's Corner and we came up with a list of, we were just throwing up ideas for topics for episodes. One of them was, can we talk about or present the benefits of doing foam fighting as a transition into rattan fighting? And that was on our to-do list and I think we came up with something like 28 episodes or something as we're just rattling off the top of our heads.
Sure.
What can we talk about? And this is one I think that we've touched on here that absolutely, and I would put this together with what Sean said earlier about, this is a great opportunity to relook at how we are bringing people into the SCA, how we are looking at updating our training process. Let's do it less haphazardly and just throwing people into practices and say, all right, let's find let's flush out a method. Let's broaden out the appeal that we're going to have to people that don't want to be bruised up, banged up, and in pain. They want to learn, do it in a way that's user friendly, and then transition them as they get used to it into something with a little more intensity. So maybe we could look at.
Well, I think that kind of helps explain fencing, right? The growth in the fencing community in the SCA is because a lot of people were getting hurt doing rattan. And so a lot of folks transitioned over. And I don't blame them.
The more pain-free alternative to the rattan fighting.
Right. And I think it's to the detriment of the rattan fighting, because there are a lot of very talented people that are fencing that could have done rattan, but for some reason, whether it was the way they were trained, the way they were treated, or the pain, right, and the level of risk, they chose to go somewhere else. But I think the future, would be helpful to get folks to transition on a smoother, softer way in.
Right.
I
would agree 100%. You know, I tell you, I've been doing, foam swords for a long time. And to tell you the truth, I grabbed from the Belgar guys their ways to make their foam swords. And I fight it in armor all the time. When my shoulders are hurt, I can still do everything. I just throw a foam sword. I don't care if I hit them. That's not the point. If they don't take it, whatever. Sometimes they'll, everyone's pretty good. They'll be like, hey, that was good. And I'll be like, no, I could never hit you with a rattan sword that way. But don't worry, we're just playing. We're training. This is the idea. Right. One of the other pieces that I've seen you do is, and what's coming out is the actual kind of foam armor that's starting to come out of Europe and places, I've seen a lot of your guys in them, and it's an entry level way to get people, that brand new person that comes.
That is how we're bringing
practice.
People in for steel now.
Yes, exactly.
That's how we're doing it here.
Yes, because they see it and they're like, I can get in that armor. It's light, it's padded, I'm safe. I'm going to hit somebody with a foam sword. They're going to hit me with a foam sword. We're all good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think part of the reason this has been such a hard sell is because, besides the fact that this is the way we've always done things, I mean, it seems to a lot of people, it seems counterintuitive to begin with, where it's like, oh, well, I could be fighting in armor, or I could be fighting with rattan, and they don't understand that if you make, as Lucan said, a softer, gentler way to enter into it, it's a much more effective method. When you're actually teaching somebody, and that's something that we've been talking about since the Coach's Corner started, is teaching people better, finding better methods of training methodology. And Lucan, you were saying that you've been doing that since 95. But honestly, this sort of training methodology, this idea that you actually teach somebody how to do it instead of having them figure it out on their own, society-wide is closer to, like, there have been pockets of it, like what you've done, and there's been some other nights, but for the majority of the society as a whole, it's been just take your stuff, go out there and figure it out. And getting somebody in through bopper or through a softer, gentler means
Lost me.
is more effective.
Yeah,
I disappeared for a minute.
yeah, you're back. I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
One of
So-
the
Did I
things
miss a
that does
question?
also to the rapier stuff is how the cut and thrust is advancing more towards ACL type full steel combat. And the people that went to rapier fighting and the fencing aspect of the SCA are wanting more. They're wanting to get into more, but it's telling that they aren't really interested in going into rattan as much as they are into expanding the steel combat into a more comprehensive type activity.
Well, it's an evolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I'm not in the heads of folks who are fencers in the SCA. I did some of it, but it wasn't my thing. But I think the academic end of it is pretty significant. And once you start to go through the fight books, right, you start to go, oh, I want to use the tools that they're using. And rattan is less attractive that way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so guys, we're at the 12-minute mark past 9. So we're probably an hour and a half, like we try to keep these to. We've tried 2 hours, way too long. An hour, we're not done talking, and I believe me, I could talk for 2 hours with you guys or more anytime.
Oh, easily.
And the good part is, I'm sure you will come back if I beg again. So
I will come back.
And in fact, at some point, I think I'd like to get you back and talk about, there's some new stuff coming in the SCA, including steel combat.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. Some of my guys here are involved in it, and I think it can be done. And I think it can be done well. You just got to keep some guidance.
Yep,
keep the ego out of it. So.
Yep. I would agree. So I think I'd love to get you back and talk about that subject. And but for now, let's see if there's any questions out there. I mean, that's
sure.
I'm gonna throw that out to the folks out there, and let's try to get through some questions. You got, I'm sure, a Friday night that you're gonna have people that hang out. I know you guys are always busy, so we'll let you go after that. And thank you very much, one way or the other, for just sitting and chatting with us and bringing that knowledge to us.
I'm really happy and honored to be part of this.
So
that I'm remembered.
Fondly.
By the way,
there's so many people that have so much to offer in terms of how to bring the best out of their students. And Lucan, you're one of the people that are at the top of my list for, I've just seen you for years bring the best out of the people that are around you. I just have the utmost respect. And it's great that you're here to join us on Coach's Corner. And it looks like we do have a question here.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those that probably could be covered on one of our other episodes, but I think we're going to throw it at Lucan here.
Absolutely.
So the question is, it's not necessarily on the current topic, but do you believe that becoming a knight will ever or should be changed to more than just rattan?
I am a traditionalist where it comes to that. So I think a knight of the society is a rattan knight. And then there could be other knights, right? If there are knights of different orders, but the order of the chivalry of the SCA is what I've been part of for 32 years.
Yep. And that's, I guess I'm in the same end as you. I think we have other orders that got brought in, and their accoutrements, and they're still building respect, and all of those pieces. They're creating their space, and it's a good thing actually for them to do, because if they came just in the order, then we're going to force down what the order is on them.
Right.
And it's not fair to them.
It's not fair to them. It's not fair to us.
Right.
I think, you're something different, be something different, embrace your difference, right? And we have to be respectful of their difference,
Yes.
right? And that's what, as peers, we're supposed to be that. So we should be living up to that.
I agree.
But
there's one aspect to knighthood, I think, that a lot of people that haven't been knighted or part of the chivalry don't really see, and that is the tremendous weight that's put on your shoulders from all the people that have gone before you. And I've watched people that have been knighted and they didn't feel that they were worthy of it, and it's crushed.
Do we ever? Do we ever feel worthy of being
no,
of being
absolutely not.
Sean, do you think you're a worthy knight?
I'm trying.
You got it. Lucan?
I'm trying, man.
obligated to do it every day.
And
There you go.
Obligated to try every day.
You look at these great people here with their prowess and their character, and you imagine somebody that maybe they never even won a tournament. They don't have either the skill or they feel like they aren't good enough coaches, good enough mentors, good enough leaders, good enough melee fighter, whatever it is. They can't hold up. Literally, I've watched people quit the SCA because they're like, I can't hold up to the pressure. And so one thing to consider is the amount of pressure that is upon those new people that are knighted. You might think from sitting in the stands and watching, like, this is such a great award. It's such a great accolade. To the person that's receiving it, it's like having a car just dropped on the top of your head. Like, it can utterly crush you if you're not ready to be a part of what you see as their tradition. So I think that's overlooked a lot of times by the people that say, well, we should just have a lot more. We should have archer knights and rapier knights and knights from siege weapons and all these other places. Like, don't think necessarily that that's a great gift to them. It may be the thing that drives them out.
The gift of obligation.
It's a huge obligation and a huge responsibility. And it's hard to convey how big of a responsibility it is.
Well, I think this leads right into another discussion. I think Sean and Tristan and a few of us talked about the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And I think these are the type of questions I think we're going to hopefully talk about. And I think some of us are not even going to be comfortable with things that we're going to be talking about. But I think that's the thing we're going to throw out there and try to engage.
I think it's really cool that you guys are doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
I think
appreciate it.
It's a great addition. I think this is something that the organization's been missing for a long time. We've got the technology now to do it. So take advantage of it. And I really, it's something, if I had a lot more time, I'd be trying to be involved with a lot more.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Yeah, we were talking about this long before the COVID thing happened, and then once once everything got shut down, I was like, this seems like a good time to go forward with this.
Agreed. It's great. It really, I think forums like this to get folks to understand, for one, what we look at, what we're thinking about, where we're coming from, and then where we can go. And people need to understand that vision. And knights and you guys are all leaders in the SCA on a day-to-day basis. And that's what people need to see, that people have a vision, that training is important, that they are important, and that their needs are important, and that we want to pass this knowledge on to them. They have to understand that. And I'm going to go back in, and some of the negative parts of SCA life has been gatekeeping. And what this organization needs to do to survive is to get away from gatekeeping and everyone to be an ambassador. So that stuff has to be managed. And this is a big start to that, because when they see leaders like you guys doing this, perhaps they'll start to do this type of thing as well and learn from you guys. And really thankful that you're doing it.
Well, I think the big piece is I for one love bringing a positive message. The SCA has been totally positive to me. It's helped my life from the ground up, and I think there are incredible. I think there are a huge number of positive people out there that have helped each other and when I talk about that, even on a Pelican level, when I talk about that, I am talking about, I don't care if you're across the room and you smile at somebody, that is helping their day. And by being able to present this, I think it's another step to show. You know, we had a question earlier, you know, how do we talk to you guys? Well, here it is. I mean, we not only do we want you to talk to us, but we're gonna be out here pushing it, right?
And on record. And on record, everything that we're saying now is out in the internet for the rest of our lives.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right.
Exactly.
So hopefully we're going to help somebody today, tomorrow, and maybe down the road.
Amen. All right, guys. It's 20 after. I'd love to thank everybody out there that stayed and listened. I know we had a little bit of problems at the beginning and got through it. And thank you for your patience. Your Grace Lucan, thank you for coming on the show and making this episode a really, really good one. I miss you. I'm going to keep stalking you until I make it out to your place, and then
I need you to come out here, man.
Stuff, man.
I'm driving cross country in October, so maybe I'll stop through in Detroit too.
Yeah, give me a holler, man. We'll talk online, and I totally miss you. You know, we came up together, fighting together the whole time.
Yeah, we did.
And one last.
All of us.
Yes, all of us. Is the one thing you forgot that you are really, really probably one of your best things is you are one patient fighter, man. And
Thank you.
It's incredible to watch you. Guys, would you like to say anything before we wrap up?
It's good to see you again, Lucan, my friend. It's
Great to see you
talk
too.
to you again. And one thing I wanted to let the audience know, like I've talked to Lucan privately because I started a dojo shortly after. I think he started Knights Hall. And we've just talked a couple of times about what it's like to start a new venture outside the SCA, building a student base, things like that. If you ever think that somebody like Lucan is unapproachable, don't ever think that. When you share the passion for fighting and martial arts and anybody like that, don't think, oh my God, they're so far ahead of me, above me. Yeah, they may be ahead of you, but if you share that passion, talk with them. We want to talk to you. I mean,
we're all on the same journey.
Yeah,
Yep.
We're all on the same journey. They may just be a few steps ahead of you or many steps ahead of you. We all want to have you join us in our path. Like that's where our passion is, and that's why we've started this channel.
Hey, you know who built my first Facebook page?
Who's
Tristan, right there.
Yeah.
He built my Knights Hall Facebook page
That's awesome.
Yeah, like
That's
you need
awesome.
it, brother. I'm going to set it up for you and get you going.
because I had no idea.
It's like how we
That's
support
cool.
each other. You know,
Yeah,
we help everybody with their venture, and the rising tide lifts all the boats, and so
Yep.
that's how it works.
Yeah,
Hey, Sean.
we've said several times that the people who have the information you want are dying to give it away to people who are going to do something with it. And it's not just okay that you ask us for help. It's like that feeds our soul. All of us have had tremendous success in the society, and being able to give that success to somebody else is like far more satisfying than any success I could have in the future. So.
Hey, how about you talk about next week's episode?
Yeah, so I think we've got next week we've got planned how to transition from a training mindset to a tournament mindset. I think Viscount Sagan's going to be joining us for that one. That's kind of his specialty, getting people into a good mindset. I know I'm planning on joining that one. I'm not sure who else we're going to have for that, but that idea of separating out the training and the tournament and how to transition from one to the next. Like I said earlier, tournament is a mental exercise more than a physical contest, and how to get into that mindset is something people struggle with. So we're going to be talking about that. So pretty excited about that one.
Awesome. Vesper, you know what we're going to say to you, right? We're going to say you're awesome. And thank you for helping, bring all of these, not only our show, but all the other shows to everybody in society, and even people that are probably not part of society listen. And you've really opened the doors in a time we needed it, and let people in. And I'm going to thank you every week we see you. So
And another plug, I don't know if people realize this, but Vesper's the person who does the graphics for the cover graphics for every show. Like she gets the pictures and puts together the
Made me look good.
Oh yeah.
I know. Look at that. Was good. I'm like, wow, he got the big picture.
Oh, and hey, speaking of Brennan, I think Vesper, aren't you interviewing Brennan this weekend?
Sunday. Yeah, Sunday.
All right.
Yeah, there you
All
go.
right.
Yes.
So if you want to come and look at your former squire there, Lucan, that'd probably be a good one.
Yeah.
Make sure you-
When's that happening?
Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Okay. I'll see
Make
if
sure
I
you
can do
ask them
that.
hard questions, man. Hard questions.
I will take questions happily ahead of
Hey,
time.
you got to ask him, what does it mean to throw the cutter?
Throw the cutter. Okay, I will
Throw
ask.
the cutter.
I'll
That's
have to
the
make a note
one.
of that.
I was gonna have Lucan tell that story, but we're out of time. So, but that's a good one. It's something.
That's
something,
coaching.
That's coaching.
That's coaching.
And that's one I used in the last crown I won too.
Awesome.
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 Yep.
All right, Vesper, wrap us up.
All right, so thank you everybody for tuning in, and I will be posting a link to the Coach's Corner, so everybody can head over there, like their page, get in touch. As you heard, everyone is very happy to help, and we will see everybody again next Friday evening.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. It was really an
Yeah.
honor. I'm really, happy to be here and hope I can help somebody.
Thank you again.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
See you
all.
again, you can.
See you guys
Have a
soon.
good night, guys.
Bye.
Ciao.